all over. But let's just talk about this place that we think is Earth or whatever we're going to define it that way. And then, if we're looking at that, we see these gigantic things. We also see things that look like petrified gigantic trees. We've had Roger Spur on here about gigantic fossilized remains of, sea serpents and everything else, basically. I mean, what do you think is with all of that? Is this tied to these cataclysmic events? Do you think
so. I think so. I mean, fossils are created really easily. You don't need millions of years to create a fossil. You can create a fossil in 30 years. If something gets buried in saline mud, it's salty mud, it will fossilize in a matter of 30 years. They found people like a fossilized shoe inside a boot, and the boot manufacturer is a well-known boot manufacturer. How does this thing even exist, And the giant tabletop mountains, which look like they're tree stumps, I would suggest they are. I think there's, I've often speculated that I think the Earth is a lot bigger than what we're told it is. There's land that we don't know about, and we're actually living in the floor of a mine. Even though look at the ocean.
That would explain the extra territories. We say extraterrestrial, maybe extra territories, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, extraterrestrial is simply someone that isn't part of what we know as the Earth. Could be living outside what's on the maps. And we would call them extraterrestrial because they're unknown. They're extra to this territory, this terra that we know. So, and even the oceans. I mean, look at the silicon trees, the giant silicon trees that these tabletop mountains appear to be. If you were to cut them down with some sort of giant equipment, what would the sawdust look like? Sand. Where did the sand in the oceans come from? They tell us it's from pounding rocks together and stuff. But when you look at sand, look at it under a microscope, it's crystals, incredibly beautiful, colourful crystals, and why would that be there? Why would just grinding rocks down in granite and what your average rock is that you see, how would this turn into this crystallised sand? But if you were to cut trees down, giant trees down, what would the sawdust look like? It would look like sand. And, I almost wonder if the oceans are simply a very large tailing pond, such as you'd find at any type of mine or any type of refinery, And you think about it, if there's some species here that is just mining the resources of this place, they need to shrink the population smaller and smaller each time so we can create smaller and smaller machinery to go out and get the fine ingredients out. And we are mining this Earth on an incredible level. I can't figure out where all this stuff that we're pulling out of the Earth is actually going. Some of these huge mines we've got, the amount of materials we pull out of the Earth, what for? So we can build mobile phones and these crappy temporary houses that we've got here. It doesn't make sense. I think we're pulling out far more resources than we need. The question is who's actually running it all and where's it all going, I think we're living in a worker environment, in a prison environment, and we're given all this stuff to keep us occupied so we don't notice what's going on around us. We don't notice what our environment actually is.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with that.
Getting into really esoteric stuff and highly speculative, of course, a lot of it. But when you really start looking at things, I mean, nothing makes sense. I've spent years trying to look at this from a human perspective and think how the human race would have created this dystopia we live in. And I simply can't attribute it to human means. I really can't, unless history is greatly and vastly different to what we're actually being told. And every evidence says that it is.